Red Dead Redemption 2 came out on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One October 26, 2018, officially making it 5 years since Rockstar released their Magnum Opus to the public. Hi, this is Tia, your content manager for Geek Vibes Nation, and today we are talking about the video game that I feel wipes every other video game away. This is my opinion, but I do believe that not only is Red Dead Redemption 2 probably the best story, let me put that out there, best story that any video game has ever. But I also believe that it is the best thing that Rockstar has ever put out. And I know that's very strong words, especially since we're all waiting for GTA 6, me included. GTA 5 is thriving in the online world. But in my opinion, and again, my opinion, you have Red Dead Redemption 2, and right underneath it is GTA 4. I absolutely love the story of Red Dead Redemption 2. It doesn't hurt that I am also a huge fan of Westerns. I grew up kind of spending a lot of time with my grandparents, and my grandpa really liked Westerns. I've probably seen, I'm not going to say I've seen all of them, but I've definitely seen a huge chunk of Westerns. So, as far as video game land goes, playing as a outlaw during the Western frontier times, that speaks to me. So, um, quick backstory, and I always like to throw this out there when I talk about video games. I was a huge video game person when I was younger. I grew up on the Nintendo 64 era, and I played the shit out of that. And then once I got the PlayStation 2, I also played the shit out of that. And my biggest video game in my teenage years was a snowboarding game called SSX Tricky, and I absolutely love that franchise. So if you're a fan of that as well, please let me know. And then during my college, early 20s, mid 20s, took many years off of the whole video game world. So I think that's why there's a lot of video games out today and that have been out for years that I just never got exposure to because I just stepped away essentially from playing video games. Lockdown happens. I really get into video games again, wanting to replay them, get into GTA 5. That's my introduction. Then have played San Andreas, Vice City, got into GTA 4, absolutely fell in love with the story of Nico Bellic and Liberty City. And then I sat there wanting more. And then I heard people talking about this Red Dead Redemption 2. And it's funny because even though Red Dead Redemption 1 has obviously worse graphics than Red Dead Redemption 2, that's never a problem for me because again, I like GTA 4 more than I like GTA 5, and the graphics on GTA 4 are obviously worse than GTA 5. I digress. The hugest determination for me as to whether I was going to play Red Dead Redemption 1 or 2 was the price. Because for some reason on the PlayStation 4 store, the price for Red Dead Redemption 1 was about $99, where the price for Red Dead Redemption 2 was about $69, which still is expensive, but I think I had a little bit more disposable income back then, so I took that chance. And oh man, if I could go back and replay Red Dead Redemption 2 for the first time again, I would love that. I do not think I was prepared for a story to be that good and that compelling. Um, and we can say whatever we want about the gameplay, right? I personally do really enjoy the gameplay. I like that it has the option, just like with GTA 5, that you can play in both first person or third person. I am much more of a third person type player, so I appreciate that. It to me not only, and I'm going to get back to the story in a second, the gameplay mechanics are, in my opinion, phenomenal. I've seen people say things that they think that it's a little outdated, Rockstar's gameplay. Not to me. I like the adjustments of it. It was a little bit of an adjustment going from GTA to Red Dead because obviously in GTA, if you want to drive, you hit R2, you want to stop L2. So there was a little bit of getting used to riding a horse in Red Dead Redemption 2 and what the mechanics were with that, but the shooting is the same. And while at first I didn't know how I was going to feel about playing with guns in Red Dead Redemption 2 that weren't automatic, because you play obviously with automatic weapons in GTA. I got quickly used to it. It's just good. That I like the mechanics, and liked the mechanics and gameplay for Red Dead Redemption 2 more than I like for GTA, especially GTA 5, where I often feel like there's not enough to do. And with Red Dead Redemption 2, you can spend literally all day just traversing the land and going hunting. And there's so much to do. The fact that you can go into so many places, you can pick up things, you can eat, you can this. There's so much to just live and breathe in with that game that is simply does not exist in GTA 5. And while maybe it's comparing apples to oranges, I can still go back and replay GTA 4 and feel as if there's more to do outside of the missions or just driving around and all that. Whereas I don't feel that way in GTA 5. But again, neither here nor there. Um, but why I think that Red Dead Redemption 2 might be the best game that I've ever played is the story. You're playing a game that feels as if it could have been a movie or a TV show, and but you're still able to play it. I don't mean to slander The Last of Us. I know that has a huge following, but that felt more like an interactive movie than it really did a game, whereas Red Dead Redemption 2 feels like a movie that you can actually play. So I do know, I am very well aware that when Red Dead Redemption 2 first came out, people were a little disappointed that they could not play as John Marston. And for me, someone who played the second one first, I sat there and go, who's John Marston? Why do I really care about this guy? Don't worry, I understand now. But you play as Arthur Morgan, who is just this, he's such a well-written character, and he's played phenomenally by Roger Clark. I mean, my God, just playing as someone like Arthur, where you go through this journey of him being an outlaw and being all rough and tough and robbing banks and strong arming people out of money and following Dutch blindly to getting tuberculosis, questioning everything you did in your life, and then finally at the end, figuring it all out and trying to do some good with what little time you have left. I guess, spoiler alert again, it's been 5 years, but if you didn't know, Arthur Morgan develops tuberculosis at some point in the game and he actually dies, which to me, I'm two ways about it. I absolutely love the character of Arthur Morgan, and it makes me cry every time I replay it. Because yes, I have replayed this game like 5 times in full. It makes me cry every time when we get to the point where it's Arthur's final mission. But at the same time, it's such a well done story. I feel of the Arthur Morgan story, not, maybe it's a little bad to compare, but I feel about it the same way I felt about Tony Stark dying in Endgame. While many people could have been upset that one of the big heroes dies at the end of Endgame, I thought it was the perfect knot at the end of the bow. Because with Tony Stark, obviously he started very selfishly and then he dies literally doing the most selfless thing ever. And that's how I feel about Arthur Morgan. He starts off a scoundrel and degenerate. He recognizes that he's done bad. Maybe what he's done isn't going to forgive everything he's done in life, but he at least knows that he has to do something within the time that he has left to make up for it and make sure that the people who survive after him have a chance at life, and that is amazing. And there's so many awesome things about Arthur. I mean, just the way he walks, the way he talks, his relationships with people. And I'm not going to go like super into it because I don't want this video to be too long, and I know that there's plenty of other videos out there that do great jobs of talking about this, but there are some key relationships in Arthur's life that are fascinating to watch. And of course, the first one is with Dutch Vanderlyn, Dutch being the leader of the Dutch Vanderlyn gang. And I think you get the gist the first time you play, but then you especially pick up on it the more that you're playing the game. But I mean, from the first moment that you are introduced to Dutch, you think of him as this kind of, he's a free thinker, he's a little extreme, to me, very unrealistic with his goals, especially because Red Dead Redemption 2 takes place kind of at the tail end of Outlaws, and when you really could kind of be a lawless person and not really get caught doing it. And Dutch's plans of this better life that they can settle away from everyone seems incredibly unrealistic as the world is trying to modernize. But the people in his gang believe in him, and a lot of them aren't necessarily bad people or outlaws. He has a lot of women in his group. He has a lot of people who were just simply uh maybe thrown away by society and came to him, and it's not a typical gang. And I think that's why everyone loves him and why he's able to play on that. And this is not a Dutch Vanderlyn video, so I'm not going to go into the psychology of him and how it's either he was just that what's the word for it? He was just that convinced of himself that he thought he could get away with it, or he was just manipulating everyone from the start to get what he wanted because he is probably a narcissist. I'll let you guys decide that. But his relationship, Dutch and Arthur's relationship, is just so fascinating. Just Dutch goes from Arthur's father figure and mentor to being a person who essentially throws him away when he's of no use anymore. That's one relationship. The other relationship is with Hosea, who is essentially the other leader of the Dutch Vanderlyn gang, who's much older, much wiser, while still a bit of a scoundrel. Clearly doesn't agree with a lot that Dutch does, but probably goes with it because he too only knows this way of life. His relationship with Arthur is very fascinating, and you can see, again, spoiler alert, Hosea dies at some point in the game, and you can see that once Hosea dies, everything starts falling apart. And I believe that because Arthur doesn't have Hosea there to talk to, things just fall apart. Things just fall apart. I lost my train of thought with that one, but other relationships are his relationship with Charles, who at first in the game, they start off as two people who Arthur even admits we don't get to ride together very often. We don't get to speak together very often. And I want to say that towards the end of the game, Charles is probably one of his biggest confidants. I mean, they align very much so morally. Both people who, again, live a little bit outside the law, but aren't bad people. And they're certainly not trying to take advantage of anyone. And I think Charles' work with the Native Americans towards the latter part of the game is very much indicative of that. I love their relationship, and I just love, even in the prologue, Charles very much, he even says that he went back to find the body of Arthur and bury it. I mean, Charles is just like a really great character in this. And before we get to the relationship between Arthur and John, I do want to mention briefly his relationships both with his ex, Mary, and Sadie in the gang. Actually, let's start with Sadie first. Sadie, to me, also, like, when you play the game, and especially towards the end, as alliances are kind of being drawn, there is a distinction between Dutch and his side of the group, which includes people like Micah, who is probably also one of the best villains in video games, and I will mention that in another video. But you have Dutch, Micah, Bill, Javier, even though a lot of people have pointed out Javier seems reluctant to be on their side, or maybe a little unsure about going against other members of the gang who are considered family. And then on the other side, you have Arthur, John, Charles, and Sadie. And Sadie's a badass, right? Sadie is a person who you first find her in the game. She was widowed by another gang, and spends most of the first two chapters. Well, yeah, spends most of the first two chapters kind of just mourning the death of her husband and probably whatever horrors and atrocities she was dealing with the O'Driscolls. And then in the third chapter, she just becomes her own and she can fight with the best of them, and she becomes such a loyal person of Arthur that I find Sadie to be, if you would think of Charles as uh Arthur's right hand man, then Sadie is Arthur's like left hand woman. I mean, she can hold her own. Um, the relationship between them, though not a romantic one, is one of great honor and respect, and it's really cool seeing it played out. I personally like play. By the way, side note, the cool thing about the Red Dead games, both in 1 and 2, is that you have the option of either playing them as high honor or low honor, and it actually makes differences. Unlike GTA, which I get it's part of the fun with GTA, but unlike GTA, especially GTA 5, where you can essentially kill indiscriminately and do whatever bad things you want and there's no consequences, there are consequences in Red Dead Redemption. In Red Dead Redemption 2, there are literally 4 different endings to Arthur, depending on what decisions you make and whether you play with high honor or low honor. I like playing as high on honor. I like playing as high honor Arthur because I just feel that low honor doesn't make sense for him. And the game almost feels like it's punishing you when you play low honor because it feels so out of Arthur's character. But if you play high honor, there are some really great interactions between him and Sadie, especially towards the end, that I really enjoy. Um, and with that being said, obviously, let's talk about Arthur and John. John was the protagonist for the 2010's Red Dead Redemption 1 and became instantly a fan favorite, still is considered by many to be one of the greatest video game characters of all times. And John is certainly a great character in on himself. In the first Red Dead Redemption, he's a family man. He's living with his wife and kid on a farm. He has left his entire outlaw past behind. In Red Dead Redemption 1, he is unfortunately dragged back into the life where he has to hunt down the people that he once considered a family. And this is told to us. Now, in Red Dead Redemption 2, we see how much of a family these people like Bill, Javier, and Dutch were to John. And we see how John is. John isn't so much of a badass in the beginning of Red Dead Redemption 2 as he is maybe an immature person who is still trying to find himself. And quickly on him, in the beginning of in Red Dead Redemption 1, he's completely very dedicated to his wife and child. In the beginning of Red Dead Redemption 2, it's explained that at some point John left the gang because he did not believe that that he did not believe that his son was his due to the nature of his wife Abigail's work prior. Um, but then also that he just wasn't ready for the responsibilities of being a father, something that Arthur frequently kind of got on him for, because if you play the game, Arthur is almost a surrogate father to John's son, with Abigail even asking Arthur several times to do things when Arthur goes, well, why don't you just ask your husband to do it? Um, so whereas it seems that Arthur has a little bit of resentment for John in the beginning of the game, you almost feel like John had his eyes open from the beginning of the game, because whereas no one else is really questioning Dutch, John is questioning Dutch from the very beginning, questioning what Dutch does. He just stays because that is essentially the only life that he knows. And I think that throughout the game, with Arthur understanding his own trepidation towards Dutch, he begins to understand John's trepidation towards Dutch, and then realizes that this is his brother, maybe not a blood brother, but this is his brother, and that he needs to stick with him. And it's nice, at the end of the game, again, spoilers, at the end of the game, Arthur essentially, especially if you play as high honor Arthur and you make the decision to fight off Dutch and all the other people that are going after you so that John can have an opportunity to flee with his family, Arthur will give John his hat, pat him essentially on the back, and it's a really bittersweet moment. And I love that the developers at Rockstar made this game because Arthur is never mentioned in Red Dead Redemption 1. So you know who Dutch is, you know who Javier is, you know who Bill is, you know that there was the Dutch Vandalin gang, you have no idea who Arthur is. And then they come out with Red Dead Redemption 2 in 2018 and give us probably one of the best video game characters of all time. And they're able to really craft this amazing backstory for the first game with this character and with this story, and it's just amazing. It is. To me, it is absolutely amazing that they were able to do that, that they had a sandbox to play in. And I think that they just did it so well. And Arthur is the type of character that even after he dies, I mean, he sticks with everyone. And uh there's been a lot of different theories, essentially, or I guess just opinions, right? Something that I've seen online was that John kind of goes against everything that Arthur sacrificed himself for, because Arthur essentially sacrifices himself so that John can get away, continue his new life with his wife and kid, and leave the outlaw life behind. And with John, then so in the prologue of Red Dead Redemption 2, it's explained that John didn't right away do that. Him and Abigail are still on the run. John has committed crimes throughout the various states. He's wanted throughout the various states. He's even killed throughout the various states. But in the prologue, John finally gets his shit together, gets everything that Abigail wants, and they kind of essentially live happily ever after until the events of Red Dead Redemption 1 happen, and people say that John doing that essentially negates everything that Arthur did for him, even though, I mean, at the time it seems like John really didn't have much of a choice, but you can form your opinions on that. It's all fun. I mean, there's part of it where you're playing the game and you go, you want to progress because that's video games for you. You want to progress, but then the more you progress, Arthur's just going to get sicker and sicker. Things are going to get less fun. With the morale of the game. The game is still fun, but if you're going from a story, the story between the gang gets less fun. Um, and then Arthur dies, which to me is very tragic. And then you get to the prologue where you play as John, which I'm sure a lot of people were happy about. At first, I was very disappointed when I had to go and play as John. I sped through that portion of the story just so that we can kill Micah Bell, and that's it. And then I just wanted to replay the game. And then the second time I played, I did play as John for a little longer, did a lot of more side things. I think probably the most disappointing thing game-wise in Red Dead Redemption 2 is that if you get a lot of money as Arthur and you get all this stuff, it does not carry over when you're John. But I guess the cool thing is that if you play, eventually when you get to the end and you kill Micah Bell, you find all the money, John becomes freaking rich anyway. But whatever. I think that Red Dead Redemption 2 has the best story of a Rockstar game. I mean, obviously this opinion is subjective, but I have not played when I say it's probably not the best game ever because everyone has a difference of opinion of what they like to play. I can tell you that, again, I love GTA 4 and I can play that on repeat. I love the Mario Brothers games. I can play SSX Tricky 1,000 times. But I personally have never played a game that has a story like Red Dead Redemption 2. Never have I played as a character like Arthur that I believe is such a well done character. Not that anyone in that game is played poorly. I mean, every single one of the voice actors in that game did a phenomenal job. I could not imagine hearing them as anyone else. I mean, from Dutch Vandelin, Micah Bell, Hosea, Charles, Sadie, all of them are played very, very, very well. But there's just something about Arthur. There's just something about playing a character who truly goes through a redemption arc, and it's done so naturally. It's not forced. it doesn't feel forced. Like even prior to Arthur, because that's the thing, right? Sorry, that's the thing. It would be one thing if Arthur was just an absolute scoundrel, absolute degenerate, evil, and then gets tuberculosis and then has this huge flip. You can see Arthur switching even before his TB diagnosis. I mean, there's a mission even in chapter 3 where Bill says something along the lines of, are you getting soft in your old age? Because there are certain things that Arthur doesn't want to do. He's questioning things. He's questioning Dutch's plans, but the only reason why he's going with it is because truly all Arthur has is Dutch. So by the time he gets to his TB diagnosis, it's not so much, oh shit, I have to now completely reflect back on my life. It's, I already knew that what was happening was bad, but now I know that there's an expiration date to my life, so I have to use the time I have left to do good. And I just think that the fact that you have people like Sadie, Charles, and John, who are obviously the, while all doing criminal things, are the morally, say, better people out of the gang, all siding with Arthur. And I mean other people as well, Abigail, Sean, Lenny. Oh my God, I could go on and on about his relationship with Lenny. Was such a pure, good-hearted relationship. The mission in the second chapter where all it is really just Arthur and Lenny getting drunk is some of the most wholesome shit that I've ever seen. As well as people like Mary Beth and people like Susan Grimshaw, who is essentially the mother that Arthur really never had. And then you have Tilly Jackson, which was also a very nice, wholesome relationship. Wasn't really the biggest fan of the character Karen, but she also kind of falls under the umbrella of not really a bad person, just fighting her own demons as well as really having nowhere to go. And that's why she's with the Dutch Van Dalen gang. Anyway, I have probably rambled on and on and on about this game, but it is just so amazing. It's so beautiful. It's so well written, and I can continue playing it over and over and over again. And even recording this video, I'm sitting here going, "Ooh, maybe I should play some Red Dead Redemption 2." It's a game that truly lives on its own and just has the most well-rounded characters that I've ever encountered, and a story that if you took out all of the gameplay and just showed the story, people would watch that. And it's almost a video game where I don't want it adapted into live action. Obviously, video games being adapted into live action is the thing right now. And I've been saying this for years. You're going to eventually hit a fatigue with the superhero adaptations, which that's a discussion for another story. I still love Marvel and I watch The Boys and Umbrella Academy, but sometimes this is just how things are, just like how Westerns aren't the thing anymore. You're going to see a different genre. So you have The Witcher, which is a video game adapted into a Netflix series. You have The Last of Us that was literally adapted into an HBO show. And people have been wondering, should we adapt Red Dead Redemption 2? Yes and no, right? No, because I think you can just watch all the cutscenes in the game and you're probably not going to get anything better than that. I don't know how a live action could do any better than what was done in the game. But then I also think that then you should just get the characters that voice them, because I don't think that anyone can play Arthur Morgan like Roger Clark. I think that no one would be able to come close. I mean, in the video game adaptations that we've seen in the past, obviously Henry Cavill is absolutely effing phenomenal as Geralt of Rivia, and I do not know how Netflix will ever be able to pull off having Liam Hemsworth as Geralt of Rivia, but that's their bed. Pedro Pascal obviously does a great job as Joel in The Last of Us, but I just can't see how anyone would be able to ever top Roger Clark's performance as Arthur Morgan. So that's my opinion on that. Again, it's been 5 years since the release of Red Dead Redemption 2. What a phenomenal game. It looks beautiful on PlayStation 4, which is what I'm playing it on because I still haven't gotten my hands on a PlayStation 5, but probably even more beautiful on that. So please let me know what you think of Red Dead Redemption 2. If you like the story, if you like the gameplay, do you agree with me that Arthur Morgan is probably one of the best, if not the best, well-written character in video game history? Do you like the story? Are there things that you disagree with? Do you also hate the Guarma chapter, which as perfect as I think RDR2 is, I absolutely hate that effing chapter. Yeah, just let me know. I mean, where does RDR2 fall on your list, and do you like it more than RDR1, or are you still kind of disappointed that the whole game wasn't just John Marston? Let me know. Again, this is Tia for Geek Vibes Nation. We are trucking along and doing fine. But if you are not subscribed, we would sure appreciate it because we do everything geeky here, whether it's movies, TV shows, audiobooks, comic books, conventions, and more. So please, if you have the time, please subscribe. Hopefully there'll be, plenty of content for you to enjoy. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. We'd surely appreciate it. And we will see you on the next one. I'm Tia again. Bye.